In this briefing, I'm going to introduce you to AI content and image creation, particularly in the sense of how this impacts on marketing right now. So this is a briefing. There are many, many versions of this topic circulating in social media and on the web more generally at the moment, and many, many different perspectives. So what I'm going to be covering here is very, very specifically how I believe AI is currently impacting both in a positive and in a challenging way the whole kind of scene, if you like, of content creation, so the written word, and image creation. And both of these are very, very fundamentally impacted right now on the way that we're seeing content being produced by a proliferation of new services and platforms that are literally seemingly arising day by day. So there's a lot happening. It is hugely fast moving. And so what I wanted to do was take an opportunity to really grab, I guess, just kind of where we are right here, right now, because in a lot of senses, this is going to change over the coming weeks and months. But I think certainly from a marketing and creative perspective, it is really important to understand kind of really where we are and how this stuff is impacting on us right here, right now. So at least then we can have a view, we can take some, thoughtful and considered decisions on how much or how little we choose to use AI within our marketing activities. So, I mean, we're seeing a really transformative impact at the moment right across all creative industries. Machine learning, or natural language processing, as it's called, is really, really becoming prevalent in pretty much every area that you touch in creative environments. I mean, there are some real positives. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm going to sort of take hopefully a balanced view as we go through this. And there are some positives. I mean, for enhancing existing content, for generating new ideas, getting you started if you ever have kind of writer's block, for example, or you just can't source the image that you're after. There is a huge opportunity here for, taking some really, really interesting steps in terms of innovation and creative thinking. As well as some of the more process-driven things like task automation. We're seeing, very unique outputs from a lot of this AI right now, some really unique visuals, maybe new styles, and particularly for some brands, some opportunities for a different creative direction. So this is getting quite interesting. I mean, certainly art and design is, very much, I think, on the cusp of making decisions as to whether or not this is a good or bad thing. So I'm not going to be judging either way here today. I'm just going to give you kind of in this briefing the kind of the facts of where we are. And so when it comes to things like content creation, there are a lot of AI-driven platforms that are going to help you with, copywriting, image editing, the creation of memes, for example, and video production. Literally whichever way you look creatively, there's an opportunity for expanding maybe the offer, maybe getting a little bit more creative using AI. So a lot of benefits emerging here, potentially both for marketing, for advertising, and for business development. I mean, there is an opportunity to explore, different depths of market research, for example, to enable targeting maybe more effectively, or at least maybe differently, giving a different perspective. Personalization is really interesting. If you're used to writing for one particular audience, there's an opportunity very quickly to kind of respin it, retone it, give it a slightly different style and tone of voice. So personalization may be very much fast-tracked using AI, and maybe expanding the reach of existing materials that you have. Excuse me. So yeah, really interesting opportunities here for kind of optimizing the materials that possibly you've already created. We're also seeing through this concept of machine learning that I mentioned before, and this is machines learning and training themselves. And I'll talk about this training in just a second. Learning and training themselves to understand data. So they're really kind of analyzing the data, the patterns, the trends, to, in effect, consistently and constantly improve the decision-making that they're doing. So if they choose to serve you with a certain piece of content or information or image, the way you react or interact with that, the way you return it to be regenerated or not, will allow the machine learning to literally improve every single step of the contact that you have with it. So what we're seeing here is a real kind of collaboration between AI and human. So in some ways, I guess people who are really supportive of this will see that this is potentially going to open up new artistic expressions, music, literature, visual arts, content production. This AI human collaboration potentially might take us to different places that we've never been to before. And it could also, in that moment, challenge traditional notions of authorship and creativity and the ownership of the IP, the intellectual property of a particular work. Because if you're producing something that's been in collaboration with an AI, who owns the IP? If the AI has sourced its ideas and its creativity from somebody else, it could be another AI or another human, who owns that IP? Do they have license to be able to bring that to the conversation with you? So there's a lot of kind of stuff that really is emerging here as needing to be sorted out. So I'm going to be watching with interest how that might develop over time. I talked a little bit earlier about the kind of optimization and the process side of things that AI is potentially going to allow us to do. And there will be the opportunity to streamline workflows, to enhance productivity, to maybe foster innovation in a more effective way. So, there really is a huge growing potential here for groundbreaking advancement in any of these creative fields. So to say, well, it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, possibly is missing the point here. It is a thing. There will be upsides, but there will also be challenges. And I definitely want to be covering those with you as we go through this briefing. So first thing I want to really think about here is content. I think a lot of people begin with content because, for our businesses, whether we're startups or established businesses, we need to be producing good, effective, efficient, reliable, truthful content. So what this is going to do, using AI to help with the generation of content, is potentially it's going to give us something a little different to what we've always expected. So AI generated content, generally is going to be created using algorithms that can generate text, images, music, and obviously other things as well, video potentially. So whilst the AI can produce very creative, very engaging content, it might not always understand fully the context, the little nuances of your brand or what you're looking to achieve, or potentially any cultural sensitivities that to be true. So it's very important to maybe start thinking about AI-generated content at that level as a starting point. Maybe it's not the fully finished, fully polished end result. So being very careful to edit and look, and don't just take it on a face value, really look deeply at what this AI has created for you. Moving into the training of the data, because of course all of these algorithms require training. So AI-generated content is very much dependent on the quality and diversity of the data used to train itself. Obviously, the better the training data, the more accurate and relevant the generated content will be. So therefore, it follows that if you consistently and continually use the same AI generation platform for your content, it should over time start to get better and better and better, more and more efficient, more in line with the expectations you have of the outputs. Now, of course, this will kick off lots of legal and ethical considerations as well. So using AI-generated content, really will raise this question I mentioned earlier around copyright, around the actual ownership of the content, and obviously any intellectual property. If you're writing kind of more detailed, more technical materials, you could even get it to write a novel for you. Who owns that? Is it the AI or is it you because you asked for it? It's really important to consider who owns the rights rights to this AI generated content and ensure that its use complies with existing regulations, obviously, and any ethical guidelines that you might have already established. So this is not a case as a marketer or as a business owner of just jumping in and saying, hey, I've got AI, I can write loads of great content, let's sack my content creators, and I'm just going to use AI now to run my business for me. And then just kind of rely on that as a fait accompli. I mean, that clearly is not going to work for you. So these legal and ethical considerations need to be front of mind. This isn't something you're going to do once and just think, hey, I've set some guidelines up. Oh, the AI, it'll learn it, it'll understand it in time. And then take this kind of really quite light touch approach. To me, using AI generated content gives a moral obligation on you to be really, really considering and very mindful of all of the legalities, all of the ethical considerations, and particularly this big question, which for me is still outstanding, is who owns the intellectual property of the output? Who owns that IP? And of course, as you get deeper and deeper into this, we need to be looking at the quality of the output. So AI generated content, obviously, in theory, can be inadvertently biased. Because it is based on this training data that I've mentioned to you. So as the algorithms learn, we would hope that they will become more and more in tune and less biased. But this might not be the case. It might go in the other direction where actually they're refueling their own biases. So I think being very careful how you use something like maybe ChatGPT and actually allowing it to regenerate content so that it understands that, hey, come on, ChatGPT, this particular piece of content here was biased, and I'm going to tell you it's biased. So please, can you rewrite it in this kind of way so that it can understand from the feedback you give it? And I think this is very important. I know a lot of marketers, because I speak to a lot of marketers who are thinking, oh, this is just the most amazing thing because I can just leave it to run, go make a coffee, come back and my article is written and I can just publish it. So this is kind of at this very, very surface level how I think by a lot of people this is being perceived. And there's a real danger in there that it's going to take us off brand. It's going to take us down some avenues that we really probably don't want to be traveling down. So be careful at every stage. That's really what I'm saying. But the upside here is that AI generated content can allow you to be tailoring your content to very specific audiences, to preferences, to different contexts, making it possible really to deliver more relevant and engaging content to more variations of your target audience. So if you are in the marketplace for, creating lots of different personas, so you can personalize and customize your content, so you don't have one piece of content that goes out to everybody, because of course that is very generic and very much generalized marketing. And what we're trying to do here is to customize and personalize. Well, AI will allow you to do that. So if you let it know the kinds of people you're writing for and say, please retune this particular piece of content so it appeals to this demographic, or so it appeals to this definition of this persona, then the AI will be able to learn who you're writing for and will be able to get that next level of detail. And some of those little nuances, which we said at the early stages, are going to be a challenge. It'll allow it to do it more effectively. Now, of course, this will, in theory, allow you to become very automated, very efficient. So AI-generated content will allow you to streamline your content creation processes, potentially saving time, potentially saving resource, and obviously budget if you outsource this stuff. But I think really more predominantly to automating the repetitive or time-consuming stuff. I think there will still be a place, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, still a place where high-quality, human-created content just has that little bit extra, those little kind of personal feelings that you can't get from automation. When people use the phrase marketing automation, I instantly pay attention, because if that is an excuse or it is the lazy way of doing marketing, then I don't support it. But if it is to help you with automating repetitive tasks or repetitive or time-consuming tasks where generally you're not really adding a huge amount of value, then I think I would be a huge supporter of it. So I think really what we're saying here is there's a time and a place for it. And of course, this introduces the idea of quality control. I mean, it clearly as a concept, AI-generated content can be hugely impressive. The speed that it can translate stuff, the speed that it can, amalgamate two pieces of writing into one, or summarize or edit a document, is mind-blowing. It really, really is. But it's also, with the quality control filter in mind, it's also really important for you as a human being to review and edit this content to make sure that it is aligning with your brand's messaging and goals and hitting the kind of quality standards that you expect or that you would be doing. Now, if writing and grammar is not your forte, this is something possibly that you mustn't kind of think, oh, it's taking that away from me. I don't, excuse me, I don't need to do it. What it's actually saying is that you still need to pay attention, but maybe get somebody else to do it. So that's also key. That's really, really important. And so possibly what we're looking here at is a collaborative approach. I mean, combining, the creativity of a human being with the effectivity and efficiency of an AI could lead to some really interesting, innovative and engaging content. So, if you were to embrace a more collaborative approach and see it as an assistant or as a colleague, then I think, this could potentially leverage the strengths of both. But it could also then allow you to take a little bit more control over how fast the machine learning happens around your particular accounts. So big opportunity, I think. But one of the things I would certainly be saying, and at the start of this briefing, I covered this off, is that this is a very, very fast-moving environment. So, the ongoing advancements that are happening at the moment, this really is continuously evolving. Almost by the end of this briefing, things will have changed again and new tools will have been developed and been introduced. So it is very much that you do need, if you're getting into this stuff, to stay up to date with the latest advancements, both to leverage the full potential of it, but also to keep it in its place. And I still think, if you are the marketer, you're the marketing manager. If you're the business owner, you're the business owner. This is not designed here to take over your world or take over your life. It is here to support and work with you. And I think that's the right kind of collaborative mindset to have as you go into this. And I think that's really, really important. Next thing I really want to focus on here is the whole idea of AI-generated images. So we've talked a little bit there about content and creating content. I'm going to give you some examples of the kinds of AI platforms that, as a marketer, I'm using and playing with, and some of my favorites in just a moment. But I'm just really giving you a briefing of the current overarching thinking about what's going on in this space right now. So the images side of AI generation potentially is going to unlock some really interesting new creative possibilities for you. I mean, we know the obvious pros. We're going to cover the cons as well, but the pros are obviously things like time saving, cost effectiveness. You might not necessarily be able to afford all the very latest, high-end stock library imagery, customization of what you want to do. So you see an image and you think, oh yeah, but it's not really in quite the right kind of flavor or tone for us, but I like the way that has been created. Well, AI can certainly customize images for you. Now, of course, then there is the flip side, and this is absolutely vital. You do not want to get stung for getting this bit wrong. So the cons of AI image creation are, again, obviously quality control, originality and intellectual property. These are two kind of bedfellows that I would both put into the cons pile here. Originality, you could say, well, that's great, isn't it, Neil? Because you've got, the upside of originality is, well, my images are not going to look like anybody else's. But of course, what you have to remember is, how is the AI creating its images? These are not coming necessarily from thin air. These are amalgamations of existing imagery. I mean, I liken this, and I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago about this. This is kind of what started to happen back in the day in the music industry, where original artists who had recorded songs were starting to have their material sampled. So maybe a particular drum track or a particular vocal or a chorus or a little sort of catchy hook. And these things were getting sampled. And yes, in most cases, they were probably getting royalties for them. But in a lot of cases, that wasn't happening. And we've seen a lot of very high profile court cases where, major artists have, allegedly unbeknown to them, infringed copyright or IP for somebody else whose work was either very, very similar or was so similar it just had to be the same work. So we do, as users or creators of AI-generated images, need to remember, and possibly using that as an analogy, need to remember to be very, very careful about how and where we're using the imagery that we're creating through AI. One of the key things for me on this one is really the difference, and I'm not giving legal advice here, but the difference between using AI-generated content for a blog and for commercial purposes. If you're using it to create a blog, maybe something internally or something like that, where there is no commercial gain or advantage to be had from it, you potentially are on safe ground. But if you're using AI-generated images to create imagery that you're going to be using commercially in advertising, in social media, in any kind of promotions, then I would say tread very, very carefully, and that's with uppercase V-E-R-Y, very carefully, because the potential in the future, it might not necessarily catch you now, but in the future, the IP and copyright implications could be significant. And trust me, you do not want to get into copyright infringement of images or photography. It is a very, very high risk game to be playing. So that is a real kind of moment of truth here. I know a lot of people are getting very excited because a lot of the outputs are very clever, they're very fast, and AI generated images can really have the wow factor. And they do unlock new creative possibilities, but maybe the idea is here for using them in such a way for things like storyboards, for example. Maybe using them in ways where you can really kind of sort of own and take control over the way that these images are going to be used, rather than just saying, oh yeah, I use those for promotional purposes, and yeah, we're going to get some commercial value from that. That is dangerous. So tread carefully. But if they are used for a mood board or to stimulate some ideas or get people in your team collaborating and talking, well, then that's absolutely fine. So creating custom visuals tailored to, your needs and the kinds of projects and campaigns that you've got going on, I think potentially are very, very strong. Another way that these are potentially going to be used, if you do go down the route of, treading very carefully, and you've got the IP, you've got the copyright, created the image, it's absolutely sound. They're going to be a very, very effective way for doing what we call in marketing split testing. So A/B testing or multivariate testing to determine the most effective visuals for maybe driving conversions in a campaign or seeking engagement if it's in social. So you produce a particular campaign, and the only difference is the individual AI generated images that you're seeing on each of the iterations of the same campaign visual, or the same newsletter that you send out, or the same meme, or the same social post. So I think this could be a way of very quickly and very effectively doing this A/B or split testing. So I'm quite excited by that one. I'm a big advocate of, testing campaigns before going out big time, but it always is a bit tricky to understand and decide what actually am I going to then be testing. But AI generated images could allow you to do that very, very quickly. The next one to think about really is social media content. So automatically generating a range of visuals for social media campaigns, which potentially keep your content nice and fresh and diverse and engaging for your followers and for your customers. Yes, why not? But again, treading carefully with the IP, knowing where the original images have come from is going to be absolutely key. But if you're doing this to create memes or things like that, then you should be on pretty safe ground. Variations for your branding and your logo designs, for example, experimenting with new brand concepts could be very interesting. If you have a range of kind of logo designs, There are platforms available that will allow you to kind of test maybe some iterations on those. Maybe the fonts or the colors could be very, very interesting. I mean, playing around with the visual style of fonts aligned with a particular brand logo, for example, or playing with color palettes. There are some very, very clever AIs that will, work with the imagery that you have on your website, for example, and or your brand, and will create some color palettes, generating numerous different iterations really quickly and efficiently, far quicker than you could ever do manually. So ways for refreshing your brand, your website, etc., etc. You can also do things like visualizing your data. So complex tasks originally will be turned into basically visually appealing and easy to understand infographics. So if you've got a lot of data sets or, really, really complicated spreadsheets that you want to turn into, exciting infographics or data visualizations, as they're called, this could really help to enhance both the understanding by the audience, be that internal or external, or you might be trying to communicate to a partner or something, and also the engagement with the data. Data that's visualized. I mean, there's a lot of research that says how much more powerful that is than sending somebody a spreadsheet or a table. People don't really understand that, but when they see it in a visual format, it might unlock new ideas and creative possibilities again. So it could be really, really exciting. Product mock-ups, generating realistic product mock-ups for e-commerce websites, promotional materials, packaging design, showcasing products really effectively, but in different versions very, very quickly. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you energy. Could be quite an exciting way of, just testing out what it is you have at the moment and seeing what the AI thinks. So it just gets another different perspective on the stuff that you might have been doing for many years without actually challenging it. So artwork and illustration, I mean, creating original artwork and illustrations for marketing materials. It might be that you've always stuck to photography. Well, AI generated artwork and illustrations could give you a whole different range of stuff or assets that you can play with. So, you might go down the route of posters and brochures, web graphics that might add a very unique kind of visual appeal. And if this isn't something that your industry typically does, is that a nice creative innovation for you? Well, the lovely thing about AI-generated images is you can do it fast. You can test this out really, really quickly. So it isn't something that you have to spend lots of budget on and lots of time. It really is an opportunity to get out there, produce some stuff, within the brand guidelines that you have, or maybe extend those and push the boundaries there and test. I think, going forward, it's going to be very much about testing and seeing what comes out. Not every platform, I will come on to the platforms in just a moment, but not every platform is going to deliver for you. Not every piece of software or every AI is going to deliver at the same level of quality. So testing and seeing what happens and exploring and playing with it is going to be really, really key. And this thing really kind of, I think the more we sort of think about this, and in this briefing, it's becoming very, very clear to me as I kind of narrate this journey, is that it's going to be really going to be, I think, all about striking this balance between AI and human creativity. So adding the human touch, be it in collaboration, and hopefully that's what it will be. So you're not really seeing AI as a replacement for you and replacement for your creativity, but actually allowing it to generate ideas and visuals or drafts, and then have yourself or humans around you, creatives, potentially refining, editing, and building upon these outputs. So seeing a certain role for the AI, almost giving it a job description at this stage of the collaboration process, I think could be very, very interesting. Utilizing AI for personalizing content to specific audiences, we talked about that, whilst using the human insights to ensure the overall messaging remains on brand, authentic, and relatable. So testing it, so letting the AI produce the ideal scenario in the personalization, and then you bringing it kind of back in range, as it were. You're just checking out the stuff that is going to work. And so you're being really quality control. So establishing really a process where, the human creatives review and approve AI generated content before publishing, so that it meets your quality standards, aligns with your guidelines, and also conveys the intended message. So it doesn't kind of go off-piste. That's really, really important. So the ethical considerations around this are really key. Excuse me, the ethical considerations are going to be around things like the biases that I talked about before, but also things like privacy. Human oversight on these things can help address these and maintain ethical standards, because if the content you're creating or if the images that you're seeing produced overstep the mark, or they kind of touch on things where you think, this is either too political or it's too sensitive, or maybe there's a religious element in here that's starting to sort of seep in. Just the tone and the sensibility of keeping this thing within sensible and reasonable bounds is so key. This has been forever a fundamental role of the marketer, is to kind of be the custodian of authenticity and truth. We don't want whitewashing. We definitely don't want greenwashing. And of course, a lot of these things need to be borne in mind if you're using a third party, of which obviously AI is, to create your content. So just always be aware of these kind of ethical concerns. These are going to run and run and run. You see a lot in the media right now about people saying, "Oh, it'll never be able to do that." Well, I don't know. It possibly will. But the point is, if you're in collaboration with it, you still at any stage going to have the control. And that's the real key here. So emphasizing this sort of storytelling and the storytelling and experimentation is really, really key here. So whilst the AI generated content can provide building blocks, what we as human beings are really, really good at is actually crafting the compelling narrative, getting those emotions to come through. AI content, when you see it and you read it, you kind of know that it's AI content. It's probably factually correct. Grammatically, it might be amazing, but often it might just miss that little storytelling kind of moment. And I know you can ask them to write in the style of a particular novelist or a particular blogger, but actually just you putting your little flavor into it will ensure all the time that it kind of sounds more like you. So the building blocks, great. Let it do the background research for you, but you still craft those moments in the story, in the compelling content you're trying to create, because that's the bit human to human, H to H. That's what we're after here. We're not after AI to your customer. That's not an equation that's going to work. So we still want to have the human to human, even though we might be initially building it from AI generated content. And, getting the skills developed of the people around you, making sure that anybody else involved in your creative team, you're investing in training and development for them, helping them to learn how to effectively work with AI tools. And so everybody then really is staying up to date with what is a very, very fast emerging set of technologies here. And recognizing that, it is not going to be perfect. So being open and adaptable to adjusting the balance that you have between your AI generated content and the human content will help you to kind of always make the most of both resources. I think that's the really key point here about when we talk about balancing and collaboration, is just playing to your strengths. The AI is going to be able to create base content at 1,000 times faster than you ever could, but you're going to be probably always better at it than knowing your customer. So, playing to both the equal strengths on each side is going to be the way that you can continuously refine, continuously optimize and balance really between the two. And for me, that is the key, really overarching message behind this briefing, is that it's going to be really important to remember that, it is about, working collaboratively and in harmony. It's not seeing this as a threat. It's not seeing this as the kind of, the golden egg that's going to answer all your problems. It's, your work is not going to suddenly stop, but what you're going to be doing is able to allow, a whole host of different tools to come in when they see themselves as being able to add value. So what kind of tools are we talking about? Well, obviously the big ones like ChatGPT, for example, are hugely, hugely popular right now. People still trying to kind of understand how best to use it. I mean, GPT-4, which is the most up-to-date and most sophisticated version of the GPT range right now, is super impressive. I mean, it really is. And there are many, many sort of things like AI assistants. There's one called Monica, which is powered by GPT-4 as a virtual assistant. And it's, you know, there's so many different sort of these around. You've got Lindy, another AI assistant, which is on taking on waiting lists at the moment. But if you are a patient and you do your best, you can certainly get in there. There's obviously Google's Bard, which is the chatbot looking to take on ChatGPT. And if you've noticed the way that Google search now is reported back when you're using Google as a search engine, you can just sense there's change afoot, because the way that certain search results are now presented back, you know, you might get, you know, 4.7 billion pages returned on your search result, but there's a nice little summary which kind of has a certain sense of AI to it at the start. So it kind of gives you one answer, and then if you want to do a deeper dive, you can go deeper into it. So, you know, there's big opportunities here for playing and testing out many, many of these different platforms. Because this is a briefing for marketers, I'm going to focus in on just a few which I'm finding as a marketer are particularly interesting and particularly useful. There are some, there's Jasper for copywriting, you've got Zapier for automating tasks, Grammarly for content editing. One that I'm currently using for content editing is WordTune, particularly like WordTune, which will do content improvements on things like blogs or brochureware. Very, very effective and really sort of very, very easy to use indeed. Some of the others as well. There's obviously ChatGPT or GPT-4, which I'm using myself for searching for ideas. I don't use it to generate specific content. I'm much more looking at it as my kind of research assistant. So I'll pop in a little search phrase on a particular topic that I might not be so familiar with and let it do the background research for me. So there might be some building blocks that come out, but as a strategic marketer, that's always a useful thing to know that I'm basing it on some kind of sensibility rather than just you know, word of mouth or just a gut feel for things. So it's a nice kind of collaborative tool. When it comes to actually output of stuff, some of the other stuff that I'm using, which is really interesting, is Tome, T-O-M-E, which gives some beautiful formats for and flows as well for presentations. So you can put the base information for a particular presentation in, and Tome will create a lovely workflow, if you like, for your presentation. I haven't used that on this particular briefing here today, because this one was very much a sort of a deeper dive piece of research, which I wanted to do because I wanted to make sure this was very up to date for you. But if it was for a longer term or a more sort of stock style of webinar, then I could have very easily used Tome to get the format and the flow for it. And I'm finding that's a very useful one. So if you're in the business of creating lots of presentations, have a little look at Tome, T-O-M-E. When it comes to bespoke images, OpenAI is my go-to right now. The one thing I would say is that there are others available. OpenAI is great and it's a bit of fun, and you can certainly, if you're looking to get some sort of images that are more kind of illustrative or kind of just you know, color palette or very much storyboard style, then it can be very, very useful. If you're looking for something that has anything with people in it, then OpenAI does this very strange privacy thing where it kind of distorts the faces of the people that are returned. I have no idea why it does that, and it's not very useful, to be fair, when you see an image and you think, oh, if that was just a normal image, that would actually be very clever and very useful. But sometimes, yes, it can be very unhelpful. So yes, go and have a look at OpenAI for bespoke images. And another one which I'm playing, or just started playing with, is Colossian, which is an AI video presentation, not actual presentation as you would think of PowerPoint, but a video presenter, so an AI actor, so to speak. And you can put in, for example, if you were promoting something like this, this briefing, you could actually get your AI actor, and there are many different genders and sort of ethnicities of the actors that you can choose, and you can have different accents, and they have very different styles. You can change what they're wearing, and they are your AI video presenter. So if you are producing a podcast, for example, they could be the front of your video podcast and introduce you before you start talking. The sky's the limit in terms of creative ideas, but have a little look at Colossian for AI video presenters, and all of these things that you can get for free, or at least a free trial for them. So they are quite interesting to have a little play with. But as a marketer, and because I'm focusing specifically on marketing today, those are the ones that I'm currently finding most useful. So just to round up then this briefing on AI for marketers, just here today, as I said at the outset, this is very likely to go out of date within the coming weeks and months because of the speed that this whole industry is moving at and evolving. But I think there will be a couple of things that will stay very, very much as our mantra for marketers successfully using AI in our day-to-day work. The first one is to embrace it collaboratively. I would say that is the key here. Know that you still have a part to play, and you do have to put the hard yards in, but know that it can maybe take away some of the legwork in some of the probably more mundane or less value-added pieces of work that you do. And I think point two, and this is really the key one here, is yes, embrace AI in your marketing, but you stay custodian of your brand's authenticity and of your brand's outputs and style. And I think if you can do it in that way and see AI as your collaborative assistant, then right here, right now, that seems like the most positive and useful way to embrace AI in both content and image creation in marketing. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that useful. Hope it's given you a few things to think about. Take care with all of this. It's evolving very, very quickly. Yes, we're going to make mistakes as we go because it's the nature of the beast, but it's a lot of fun to be had out there, and I wish you every success. And if you do find you get any success, or you find a particularly good platform that's really, really serving you well, track me down on social, please, at Neil Wilkins X, because I would love to know more examples that you're finding working really well for you. So have a great rest of your day, and happy working with AI.